Welcome to part 2 of our executive series. We're going to explore the hidden price tag that comes with those quick and cheap technology solutions. And just to be clear, we're not really talking about code here. We're talking about cash. This briefing is all about how those seemingly smart, short-term decisions can create a snowball of financial risk, slowly eating away at your margins and, frankly, boxing your company into a corner. So let's get right to the core thesis. It's this. Every single technology decision, whether it's about a project timeline or a piece of architecture, is fundamentally a financial decision. The catch is that the real costs, they don't always show up on this quarter's P&L statement. This all starts with a pretty critical shift in thinking. We have to stop seeing technology architecture as just another cost center, another line item on a budget. It's much more accurate to think of it as your company's entire economic system. It's the engine that determines how quickly, how efficiently, and how cheaply you can actually deliver value to your customers. Okay, so if taking the long view is so obviously important, why do we constantly fall into this cheaper now trap? Well, as it turns out, the reasons are systemic. They're actually embedded in the very way most of our businesses operate. It's a real paradox, isn't it? You have brilliant leaders at the helm of these companies, yet they repeatedly make these short-term calls that create massive long-term headaches. But this isn't about individual mistakes. It's really about the systems that we're all operating within. The research all points to a clear incentive trap. Think about it. Our financial dashboards, they're fantastic at showing immediate wins, but they're terrible at visualizing the future liabilities we're creating with technical shortcuts. Our teams get rewarded for shipping features fast, not for building sustainable systems for the long haul. And leadership bonuses are almost always tied to quarterly profits, not long-term risk mitigation. It creates a cycle where the easy choice now is almost always rewarded. All right, so let's actually quantify this. These hidden costs are not some abstract theory. They are a massive and, more importantly, a measurable drag on your company's performance. Now, get ready for this number. At a national level, the scale is just staggering. A study from the Consortium for Information and Software Quality puts the annual cost of poor software quality at over $1.5 trillion. That's for U.S. companies alone. This is a systemic economic problem. So, how does a giant number like that actually translate down to an individual company? Well, according to McKinsey, organizations with high levels of what's called technical debt spend 40% more on just basic maintenance. I mean, imagine that for a second. That's money that could be funding genuine innovation, but instead, it's just being spent to keep the lights on. And here's where that money is really going. A study by Stripe found that developers, your highly paid, highly skilled innovators, are spending a third of their time, a full third, just wrestling with technical debt and maintenance issues. What could your company build if you suddenly reclaimed 1/3 of your entire engineering budget? So when you add all this up, it's not just numbers on a page, right? It shows up as 4 really distinct business problems. First, there's the direct financial drag from all that higher overhead. Then there's strategic risk, because your company slowly loses its ability to react to the market. Then you have margin erosion from things like inefficient onboarding or slow incident recovery. And finally, there's human friction. The very real cost of burning out and losing your top talent because they are just tired of fighting broken systems. And here's where it gets really interesting. These technical problems, they don't stay technical for long. Over time, they start to spread, to metastasize, and they become deeply embedded in the very structure of the organization itself. Honestly, the best way to understand this is to think about it just like financial debt. That initial shortcut you took, that's the principle. The interest payments are the constant, ongoing drain on productivity. The endless bug fixes, the fragile systems. But the most dangerous part, of course, is the risk of default. And in this world, default looks like a catastrophic system failure, a major security breach, or maybe worst of all, just becoming irrelevant because you literally can't innovate anymore. This quote from the software architect Ruth Milan just nails a concept known as Conway's Law. What it means is that inevitably, your software architecture will end up mirroring your company's communication structure. So if you have siloed teams that don't talk to each other, you are guaranteed to get siloed, fragmented software. Your technical debt becomes a perfect reflection of your organizational debt. Okay, so the big question is, how do you spot this problem before it spirals out of control? The good news is there are clear, non-technical warning signals that any leader can and should be looking out for. You start asking questions like these. Is our cloud bill growing faster than our revenue? That's a huge red flag for inefficiency. Do our teams hesitate when you ask them if they can ship a new feature without breaking something? That's a crisis of confidence. Are you noticing that the same bugs keep reappearing over and over again? And maybe most critically, does all the knowledge of how your core systems actually work live inside the heads of just a few key people? These are the early tremors before the earthquake. And make no mistake, that earthquake can be absolutely devastating. We've seen these exact patterns lead to catastrophic failures. In one infamous case at a firm called Knight Capital, a software flaw cost the company $440 million in about 45 minutes. It nearly bankrupted them. The risk here is very, very real. All of this brings us to the single most important takeaway. When you get right down to it, this isn't really a technical problem. It's a financial strategy problem. And that realization leads to 3 crucial questions that every leadership team should be asking. First, what do our financial incentives actually reward, short-term speed or long-term health? Second, how much of our technology budget is just spent paying interest on old problems versus creating new value? And third, is our organizational structure helping us build the architecture we need for the future, or is it just cementing the one we happen to have today? And that's really the bottom line here. Technology architecture isn't just an IT expense. It is a strategic asset, or a strategic liability that will define your company's agility, its resilience, and ultimately its profitability for years to come. Ultimately, understanding the real cost of cheaper now requires looking past the immediate price tag. It's about seeing the long-term financial story that our technology choices are writing for us every single day. And the real question is it a story of compounding assets, or is it a story of compounding debt?